So what led you to join the WHO from this setup, which actually seems to have been working very well, the integrative medicine setup? What led you there? What's your current role? And how does WHO look at traditional systems like Ayurveda?
So working in Medanta, I was fortunate to be connected with many policy programs of the government of India, as well as with few state government policy programs. This had given me a perspective about policies and and its impact on health systems, and I think when this WHO's request came, I thought that it was a good opportunity for me to probably have a greater impact on the community if where I am trying to serve, and also on the Ayurvedic system itself if I am able to place myself in WHO. And I think again I was I was rightly placed in the right place and the right time to have been selected here.
Coming to the WHO, how does WHO look at Ayurveda and such systems? And do you think Ayurveda is really, or other traditional medicine systems are really going to be used by WHO in public health? I know they say it's like a major trust area of theirs, but I don't know of any programs that have used any of these systems.
What you're saying is right. WHO has started looking at traditional medicine about 40 years before, about almost 2 years before the Alma Ata Declaration. And since then, there had been a unit of traditional medicine in WHO. Almost all regional offices of WHO has a traditional medicine focal point or a traditional medicine advisor there. And WHO professes that it wants to use traditional medicine for achieving universal health coverage and many other things which the member states want. But until now, WHO's activities in traditional medicine has been mostly related to pharmaceutical products, or traditional medicine was looked at as another pharmaceutical product. So to tell you how
Right.
how you can understand that is that until about 10 years or probably 8 years before, during this long duration of 40 years, WHO had placed, or the traditional medicine unit was placed under the essential medicine unit. So you place something in one particular unit because it is connected to that. So your perspective of traditional medicine was generally on as a what's it called, as a pharmaceutical product. But of course, there is a lot of improvement which WHO has brought into pharmaceutical products of traditional medicine, like bringing out the WHO GMP, good manufacturing practices for traditional medicine, which is a huge success across the globe. Most of the countries follow that as the primary, like a reference textbook. Good agricultural practices, good collection practices, good practices for identifying residues and impurities in traditional medicine, in herbal drugs, etc., etc., and pharmacovigilance systems for herbal medicine. They have set up all these things. Recently, since 2011, WHO has shifted its focus on traditional medicine, and one has started working on including traditional medicine in the ICD in the categories. So ICD-11 has a traditional Chinese medicine, which is a representative of this traditional Chinese medicine as practiced in China, Korea, and Japan.
So just for our listeners, I just want to explain, ICD is the International Classification of Diseases. So all diseases are codified in this. Yes. Please go ahead.
Yeah. In fact, after that, after I came here, we had also started the ICD code development program for Ayurveda, Unani, and Siddha system of medicine. There is a big lack of appropriate information available with member states on how to help, how to utilize traditional medicine practitioners, how to train traditional medicine practitioners, what are the criteria for which they could be on which they could be allowed to practice, etc. So we are developing training benchmark documents for traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, Unani, Siddha, etc. At the same time, we are also developing practice benchmark document for Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, Unani, acupuncture, etc. And so these are things which we are doing right now. We are also working on developing the standardized terminologies for these traditional medicines, because many a time, many societies, not so specific in Ayurveda and Siddha, but but Unani medicine has different terminologies used in Europe. It is used not much, it's very less used in very little used of utility in Europe, but basically is used very much in Southeast Asia and then in Middle East. So Iran and such places have a different terminology for the same concept. So we are trying to bring that together. We are going to standardize that terminologies. We are also working on traditional Chinese medicine for the same thing, because different China, Japan, and Korea uses different terminologies. We are trying to bring them together. We are also working on Ayurveda and Siddha system of medicine for developing terminologies of like standardized terminologies. Also, we are currently developing a digital tool for allowing or helping people to practice yoga appropriately. So safe and appropriate practice of yoga as a physical activity. So we are promoting it as a physical activity tool. Basically, we are not making any claims of yoga in that, because it is specifically meant to be a physical activity. And we are because there are a lot of practitioners of yoga, and there are a lot more people who want to practice good yoga and the correct way. So we have brought together international yoga experts. We have thought out the right way of doing yoga, the simplified ways of doing specific yoga asanas, and then we are putting all of them into a mobile app, which will help people to learn yoga,
Wonderful.
specific asanas, and then bring them together and do a full vinyasa kind of a thing, like a full sequence of yoga activities. So
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Great to know that, mobile technology is going to be used for yoga, for people to practice yoga as well. With the COVID pandemic raging, and you're being a member of the Government of India's COVID task force, I'm sure people in our audience are curious about Ayurvedic COVID prevention and treatment measures. WhatsApp University. Actually, today is the first time I'm hearing, something of great credit to WhatsApp University. But with that, we have seen a lot of purported treatments for COVID or preventive measures. So, are there any that have shown Ayurvedic remedies for COVID that have shown efficacy in any clinical trials that you're aware of? I know there's been very strong data collection, and some data has come out from China about benefits of traditional Chinese medicine for COVID patients. Has there been any such data collection in India? And what's the state of that?
There has been huge or humongous effort put in by different organizations, especially the ministry within India, to do data collection on interventions and outcomes on COVID, for COVID management and even prevention. So I could say some of the cohorts are 180,000 patients and all those things. So even villages put together. So there are a large number of data which has been collected. What I can tell you is we know there are 3-4 medicines which seems to be very effective. So let me tell you one by one which they are. One of them is ashwagandha. Ashwagandha seems to be effective with the kind of intervention as an intervention for prevention. It seems to be very effective. We have done a large clinical trial with ministries, and it's a multi-centric trial, including 2,400 patients in India. So this it is a randomized controlled trial, 2 arms, one placebo and the other, and it seems that ashwagandha has considerable benefit in prevention of COVID like viral infection. So I think ashwagandha is one. Two is a combination of Giloy and Pipili. Giloy is Tinospora cordifolia and Pipili is Piper longum. So the decoction of Giloy and the powder of Piper longum. Powder of Piper longum is in very small quantity, like it's like a pinch in a decoction, and taken together seems to have considerable benefit in COVID positive patients in not developing symptoms, as well as people who have developed symptoms and who had got admitted in the hospital to leave the hospital within the period of 7 days. 6 to 7 days is what we have seen. So it is a very good medicine, as we have seen right now. We had done that in India. Several studies have been done. This CSIR Ayush Ministry study was also done on this particular drug, which also found almost the same result. We did a study. One of the first studies was started by Sushila. I organized that study for them in Medanda. So they also had found the same result, where patients got admitted. They got discharged by 6 to 7 days, because at that time, it was in the beginning, patient could not be discharged unless and until you have a COVID negative, a report in your hand. So it is not that your symptoms are over, you can now go home and treat yourself. That is
Yes.
not the case at that time. So we could discharge patients because we could get COVID negative results from the patients. So that was there. And then we did a pilot study in UK. We are actually going to do a further larger study in UK with the Warwick University and the All India Institute of Ayurveda on the same drug, and a much larger study with the London School of Tropical Medicine, Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, and All India Institute of Ayurveda, involving something around 2,500 patients on No, this is on post-COVID post-COVID syndrome management. So we have two studies which are going to happen internationally soon, and like these are several studies which had happened in India. We also know
So for
that
for the post-COVID, what are the specific drugs, if you can tell us? I mean,
only ashwagandha. We are giving only ashwagandha at this moment, but
Okay.
we are asking that take ashwagandha with ginger juice. So that's a clinical way of doing it. So not anything else. So if you are taking ashwagandha for this purpose, it will be better. It will be more beneficial to take with ginger juice. And
Sure.
one more thing which I can say for sure is the medicine called as Anutailam. So Anutailam has been found to be found to reduce the nasopharyngeal viral load by considerably. It has been done by 2-3 government institutions, laboratories which has no connection to Ayurveda in India, and they had come out with the results. And we think that has a huge potential. So we have been asking people to rub Anutailam inside their nose twice a day, which seems to have been having some effect. But this is basically completely based on Ayurvedic ideas. And from Siddha system of medicine, there is a medicine called as Kabhasura Kudinir, which is very effective, very very effective. Also very similar to it has few more drugs than the Giloy and Pipili combination, but that seems to be very effective. In fact, like what I like about the Tamil Nadu government is that today when this new wave has started in India, they had actually gone ahead and asked given blanket order to all hospitals, clinics, etc., to give this as a medication in their clinics. So this is something which happened last time also. So and it was very effective, and it was yeah. So
Yeah, that
so
is
I
fantastic. I had no idea that a government has actually done this. This is
They did
wonderful.
it last time also, and this time they did it again. So that's what I'm saying. So they are just going ahead with it, and it seems to be had a good effect in the initial phase when last time when it was spreading like wildfire in Chennai. That is when they started doing this, and then they were able to bring it down. So it is it could we do not know whether we can put a causality to the SCADA, but
Sure.
people are much better. People feel much better after taking the medicine. They don't have much symptoms, and they are coming out of the disease much faster. So I think these are the three things which I can say from Ayurveda. One is ashwagandha, Giloy Pipali, and Anutailam. And this medicine from Siddha system of medicine has to be found to be very effective. So the clinical trials which has been done and which has been completed will be published soon. And those clinical trials which are going to happen will be definitely published in very good journals. We also think that there could be like other medications even for hypoxia, etc., which we find a few very good doctors, very bold doctors in Maharashtra and Gujarat who had been practicing Ayurveda and managing patients who were in hypoxia, who didn't have access to oxygen. So I have been reviewing this data actually for the past 2-3 days. That's what I have been doing, and I find that they have been able to bring back the patient to normal oxygenation by within about 24 hours, like by giving these medicines. So it seems to be something which needs to be explored much further. But I think that is a very good sign, because especially in India at this particular moment, if we tell, that's a very, very, very advantageous thing for the community. So probably we will follow that through. But I have no real I don't have a clinical trial to tell you that it happened because of this, but there could be no other reason why it could have happened. That's how I can say that. Yeah.
This is so wonderful to hear, Geeta Krishnanji. But the thing that makes me sad is that for the trials that have been successful and for the other ones that are in process, if they do become successful and you show that they're effective in COVID, this will still not make this should be making the headlines of all the top newspapers, right? But I don't see that happening because of the current political climate. And that's extremely sad that such success is not widely disseminated. Instead, we are all going by what WhatsApp University is telling us, all sorts of things. So we are actually past the hour. We've gone 6 minutes past. So I'm going to switch now to a few. We have a whole bunch of questions from our listeners and audience. So I'm going to start with a few of them. If you don't mind staying for a little longer, we could go through that.
Of course, I can.
Okay, thank you. So, I have this is continuing with the COVID theme. An interesting question about, how Ayurveda looks at vaccination for communicable diseases. This is by Jagannathan Ji from the Bay Area. So he asked, what is the view of Ayurveda on holistic diet and herbs and lifestyle versus the current approach of vaccination for communicable diseases?
Ayurveda is a very accepting system of medicine. So probably we were the first ones, even though Chinese also claim for that. We were the first ones who started using vaccination. Most probably, we started using smallpox vaccination, and that is not something which we didn't look at. So I think whatever is most logical is what you should accept at any given moment of time. It keeps changing. What was logical 100 years before might be totally absurd in today's setting, and what is right, probably what was right 100 years before could still be right after 1,000 years also, like that. So this logical understanding is what makes us human. That's what I believe. And at this particular moment, logic tells us, or proper common sense tells us, something that will allow you to get sick or prevent you from being sick by 50%. If it is available, you should use that. Because like, if you look at, if we happen to by any chance fall in the unfortunate 2%, and then if somebody has to tell our kin that had he or she taken that vaccination, probably the chance of this meeting of ours would have been 50% less. That is a big no. We don't want to hear that. So I think Ayurveda, for Ayurveda, there is no problem with vaccination, because we think we are the people who invented vaccination.
Actually, I neglect to say that he's the same parent, he's an Agastya Gurukulam parent. He sent a follow-up question, a couple of others, and he does mention in one of those that Ayurveda was one of the earliest medicinal systems to practice vaccination. So physicians would deliberately inoculate either into the skin or into the nose scabs and pustular material from patients with smallpox. So his follow-up question is Ayurvedic vaccination still practiced for any disease? And is there any research in that area happening in Ayurveda with respect to vaccination, for new diseases, for instance, for COVID or etc. So
No, at present, Ayurveda at present is not using the current format of knowledge generation for getting acceptance of a vaccine. Like it uses a different format. So the society has a specific regulation which uses a current way of technical developmental process for achieving making something a vaccine. That is not being followed by Ayurveda. So we are not using any vaccine at this particular moment. Neither are we means vaccine is a very specific intervention for a very specific disease pathogen. So we are not using that, to be frank. So I don't think that in my knowledge, which I think generally I have at least some general knowledge. So like I don't know that we are using any vaccinations. No.
So does Ayurveda have anything to say about the using instead of using a whole antigen, substituting that with subunits like mRNA? This again came from Jagannathanji, and he has one more question. I'll just add that also, and that is about the practice of Nasya. So does Nasya provide protection from COVID-19, and does this reduce the viral load or modulate the mucosal immune system? How does that work?
So let me answer the easier question first, which is Nasya, which of course Anutailam is what I told you about, which is something which we use for Nasya, and which has been found to be reducing the viral load as well as promoting the innate immunity and improving the capabilities of the mucosal membrane to fight off the virus. So this is something which has been proven, or rather proven in the laboratory, and we know from clinical experience that people who use Nano-Thylam has a very low chance of getting infected, even though they are exposed considerable for long period of time to the COVID virus. Especially I'm talking about people who are working in COVID wards and all. So this is something which we know for sure. Regarding the mRNA and the vaccine which has been developed through mRNA, or the technology which Pfizer is using, I think uh, in the general sense, Ayurveda has nothing to say against.
We have a question from another of our parents, Sri Devi ji from Bangalore, asking how can we train kids in Ayurveda from a young age? Is there any course made for kids to understand Vedic anatomy and physiology, or any textbook specifically for kids?
No, in fact, this is also this is a question which which had made me think. There isn't any. Why is it not there? That is my question to myself, because it should have been there. There are few introductory modules which has been introduced in some school curriculum in some central schools and in some Arogya Bharati schools and Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan schools. I know about that, but I really do not think that there is a centralized program or an educational program for this. In fact, I think there is a big dearth of such a information or a tutorial module, and it should be developed as early as possible. The simplest way to teach children is to tell them that you need to have but we call it sarva dharmeshu madhyamam, like that is the most difficult thing to do. So you have to have everything, but that all in moderation. So this, if you can teach children to have moderation and have discipline in life, that would be something of what Ayurveda would definitely say, like that's in the simplest way, the best way of Ayurvedic living. Do not say no to anything, but do not say yes to everything all the time, so that's what moderation means. And you should be able to, and to develop the knowledge to decide what is right and what is wrong. So in Ayurveda, it says in Ayurveda is to give you happiness. So then you have to understand what happiness is. Happiness is not always, or sukha. Sukha is not exactly what we call as happiness in what we think. Sukha is something which will be considered to be useful for you in increasing your longevity with satisfaction and and fulfillness, or the fulfilling feeling, so that or fulfillment. So this is something which we need to teach, and as parents that is what we can do. And but it is not simple, as I just said. This is the most difficult thing. So probably I just oversimplified it.
So I have a question from Vasundhara ji, who's asking about where can we find these research findings of these traditional medical practices. So I guess where is the evidence base? I'm sure they are scattered between different journals probably, but is there one place where they can be found for people to refer to?
Yes, if you look at if you are looking at evidence, then you should actually look at the textbooks of Ayurveda. Let me explain, because evidence is something which you are looking for something which is new into the world. You don't try to find evidence for why we are eating rice, or why we are doing we don't try to find evidence for that, because, or why we are drinking milk, or why we are making chai in a particular way, and this is because we have been doing it for such a long period of time. For WHO, traditional medicine is not need not always be evidence based in the 100% scientific terminology that we are using as evidence, because it might not be there, we cannot find. But you should look at the continuity of a practice over how many generations, through millennia. Let us say Ayurveda, uh, charaka was Charaka Samhita was supposed to be taught in the Takshila University, which is something around 500 BC, if I'm not wrong. So which was closed down in 500 BC, if I'm not wrong. So it was so early in time it was available, and the first written form of Charaka Samhita was available something around 1st century BC. What we are doing is we are not even making one change in the letter of what Charaka has said. This is not a religious testimony to say that okay, we are following a textbook. We are not following a textbook. We are only following the rules in the textbook, and we are trying to evolve new things. The textbook is so dynamic that it can be used in different contexts. It can evolve itself into to be utilizable in different contexts. So if you are trying to find evidence for what is said in Charaka Samhita, then we should look at all the generation which has used Charaka Samhita and is still existing safely to face the COVID virus. So that's what we should look at.
They were specifically looking for maybe the studies that you talked about, where you were talking about several conditions. So
yeah, I think we have one in Journal of Thoracic Surgery, one in Journal of Integrative, I think two in Journal of Integrative Medicine, and I have to find out where the journal where the Goa study was published.
Probably a search in PubMed maybe will bring it up.
It was published by Foundation for Medical Research Foundation for Medical Research. Dr. Tanas Berdi was the chief investigator of that. So I don't remember, but it was published in 2019. So I think it is not so old. So it should be available.
So it was wonderful having you with us, Dr. Geeta Krishnan. Thank you for sparing so much of your time and talking about it. It was really a fascinating talk. And I actually really would hope to bring you back to go through the other questions I had. I had so many, and now after this talk, there are so many more questions that have come up. So thank you so much. It was a real pleasure
Thank you
speaking.
for having me. Thank you so much. Thanks for everyone.